This video is about a 2008 Jeep Commander left side exhaust manifold gasket replacement. I've already done the video on the right side. The left side turns out is actually even more difficult than the right side. You pretty much ignore the factory service manual. In terms of removing accessories from the vehicle, you need to remove the battery tray, and the power steering pump and the upper radiator hose. And then you can move some of this electronics out of the way. You don't need to really remove anything else, because you can get, once you've got this stuff out, you can get your hand in underneath there to get to all the bolts. So this is just like the right side, but here you're going to be using your left hand to get in there instead of your right hand. So I'm going to go through all the tools that you're going to need. The number of different sockets is quite staggering. You're going to need all of these. These sockets that I'm going to show you are essential. If you don't have them, don't start this project, because you're going to get to a bolt that you can't get out. And the reason is because the steering column is right in the way where your hand needs to be to actually work all these nuts and bolts. So that steering column, if you're not going to take the steering column out, then it's very difficult to get these bolts out. So you're going to need all these tools to get the bolts out. Each bolt is actually different in terms of how you get it out, because of the interference of the steering column. So what I discovered is that this gasket is actually not leaking, but even though it wasn't leaking, one of the bolts actually broke off, and one of them wasn't even tight. So because of the warpage of this manifold, there's pretty much no way you can avoid changing it out on a car of this age. It will be very seriously warped and about to leak. So you do have to change both of them on a car 200,000 miles, and it's unavoidable. So let's just go through the tools one by one. So these are 10 millimeter, all 10 millimeter sockets and wrenches. You're going to need two of these. One of them you're actually going to cut off, and you're going to take a 1/2 inch socket and cut that off and weld it on. And you'll need this to torque up the bolts, as well as you might need this to get the bolt off. Okay, then you need a regular 10 millimeter wrench, and you need a 10 millimeter ratcheting wrench like this, which is straight cuts. And this is because there's a bolt which is all the way against the firewall, and there's pretty much no way you're going to get it out except with this. Okay, then you need a regular 10 millimeter socket and some various lengths extensions, and a 1/4 inch ratcheting wrench. I also needed this, which I made up by welding on a part of a 1/2 inch socket and sacrificial wrench. You need various lengths of 1/2 inch socket, and you need a very small ratcheting wrench to get in tight places. And finally, what's very important is you need this air-powered right angle wrench, which is the only way you're going to get into that tight space and actually get those bolts off without taking hours and hours. So this will zip off a bolt very quickly. I mean, if you don't have one of these, don't start this project. If you have all these tools, this job is entirely doable without taking off the steering column. I don't know how else you would do this job, but this seems to get everything done. The only real risk here is that if a bolt breaks off, because the bolt that I broke off was actually close to the power steering pump, so it was easy to get to, and I could use a fast lock grip pliers to actually get that bolt out, even though the head had broken off. If a bolt breaks off and it's close to the firewall, pretty much the only way you're going to be able to extract that bolt is by taking out the engine. So be prepared that if you break off a bolt, you may have to take the entire engine out in order to get that bolt out. And that is a real risk, so just know that ahead of time. One thing to be aware of is that this gasket is not the same as the right side. It has an EGR hole over here. This bolt over here is very difficult to get to, and you will actually use this straight ratcheting wrench to get to this bolt, which is right against the firewall. This extra bolt makes this whole job much more difficult than the right side. So one of the most difficult parts about this job is trying to get the exhaust wire pipe reattached to the manifold on the left side. On the right side, you can actually get your hands in there, and it's quite easily to just thread these two bolts in. On the left side, you cannot get your hands in there. There's a long tunnel when you're looking under the car to actually get to these bolts. So you're going to do it with a really long extension. So the question is, how do you put this nut back on? So the method I use is to take this quite thick piece of spring steel, and this spring steel is 2.1 millimeters thick, and you bend it into this shape. Okay. And then what you do is you take your nut and you hook it in like this. Okay, now that nut is quite securely in now. Then what you do is you take your 15 or 16 millimeter socket and you put your bolt in there, and then from underneath the car you'll actually see down the tunnel line where the left wire pipe goes up towards the engine, and you'll take this nut and actually position it behind the flange, and you'll come in from the other side of the flange with this extension and you'll screw these in like this, and that's how you'll get it in. And then when you're done, you just push really hard and this thing will pop off. And that's the only way I could find to actually get this nut in. I mean, the other solution would be to take this nut and actually weld some sort of flange onto it and actually weld that onto the manifold, which is another solution. In this way, this is permanently stuck on. But otherwise, this actually does work and allows you to do it as one person without needing any hands from another person to actually help you.